3 years into our marriage, I thought I had a handle on what a good life looked like. Rachel and I weren't perfect, but we had something that felt real, steady, comfortable, earned. We knew each other's rhythms. She liked her coffee extra hot with just a splash of oat milk. I liked mine quiet, just like our mornings on the porch. Our arguments were rare, and even when they happened, they never got ugly. We'd fight over dumb things like laundry or who left the porch light on, and then it would blow over with a shared joke or a hug that lasted long enough to remember we were on the same team. We weren't flashy. No curated Instagram feeds or elaborate vacations. But there was a kind of peace in our routines that I never took for granted. I thought she didn't either. That's why I didn't think twice when she got that text. It was a Thursday. We were halfway through a lazy weeknight, a couple of tacos, a half-watched documentary, our dog Leo snoring softly at our feet. Rachel's phone buzzed on the coffee table. She reached for it, glanced down, and I saw the shift immediately. Her face didn't drop exactly, but something in her smile, the faintest twitch in her jaw, told me the message wasn't light. She stood up and walked into the kitchen with her phone. I figured maybe it was work or something from her mom. When she came back, she was already replying, her thumbs moving fast. "That was Lindsay," she said, keeping her tone even. "She and Chris broke up. Apparently, it was ugly. She's flying in tomorrow." "Oh. Damn. You okay?" "She's the one who's not, but yeah, I think she needs a break from everything." "Just her, or?" "Just her," she said quickly. "She booked the ticket already." "Just a few days," she said. I nodded and let it go. I didn't feel great about it, but I wasn't going to question Rachel. I trusted her. Lindsay was her cousin, technically, but they'd grown up like sisters. I'd only met her twice, both times in group settings, once at our wedding, once during a quick stopover at Thanksgiving 2 years ago. She had the kind of presence that turned heads, fast talking, fast laughing, always the loudest person in the room. Fun in short bursts, but not someone I'd have over for a quiet weekend. When I got home from work Friday evening, Rachel was already home, setting out wine glasses. She was playing music, something upbeat and slightly too loud for our usual quiet Friday energy. Leo was pacing near the front door, ears perked. "They're landing soon?" I asked. "She just texted, Uber says 20 minutes. "Cool," I said, setting my bag down. "How long's she staying again?" Rachel hesitated. "Couple days. She said she didn't book a return yet, but she's still figuring things out." That gave me pause. I didn't say anything, but I clocked it. Just didn't feel like a detail Rachel would have glossed over if this visit really was as spontaneous as it sounded. When the doorbell rang, Rachel practically ran to get it. I followed a few steps behind and watched Lindsay burst in with 2 large suitcases, the kind you pack when you're moving, not visiting. "God, this house is so cute," she said as she pulled Rachel into a long hug. Then, to me, "Hey there, stranger." "Hey. Welcome," I said. I offered to help with the bags, but she waved me off. "Oh, I got it. I need the workout." Before I could ask anything else, she'd already kicked off her boots and was walking around the living room, glass of wine in hand, like she lived there. I figured maybe it was just her way of coping, acting like everything was fine so she didn't have to face whatever she'd left behind. I told myself to be patient. But even from the first night, something about it felt off. Dinner was weirdly giggly. Rachel and Lindsay kept exchanging glances, whispering inside jokes I didn't know. I sat there chewing spaghetti I'd made, feeling like a third wheel in my own house. That night, around midnight, I came downstairs to grab a glass of water. I tried to be quiet, didn't turn on the lights, just moved by habit. But I froze at the sound of whispering coming from the living room. "I swear, he has no idea," Rachel said. Lindsay laughed, low and sharp. "Of course he doesn't. You're good at this." There was a pause. "I still think the beach photo is the best one," Lindsay continued. "The one with the towel and the sunglasses? He looked so hot." "Stop," Rachel whispered, giggling. "Seriously. I'm just saying. If you ever wanted an out." "Shoo." At that moment, I stepped into the doorway. They both looked up instantly. Rachel's phone screen went dark and she quickly set it face down on the cushion beside her. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked, voice a little too bright. "Just thirsty," I said. "Didn't mean to interrupt." Lindsay leaned back, unfazed. "We're just talking about dumb stuff. Girl stuff." Rachel smiled too fast. "Yeah. Just decompressing." "Right," I said. I stood there for a second longer than I should have, then walked into the kitchen and poured my water. From behind me, I heard a soft whisper, and then, "You're so paranoid," Lindsay said. I didn't respond. Just went back upstairs with Leo following close behind. I told myself I was overreacting. That it was probably nothing. That I should give Rachel the benefit of the doubt because that's what marriage is supposed to be. But in the dark, lying next to a woman who suddenly felt like a stranger, I started to feel something I hadn't felt in years: doubt. The kind that doesn't shout, it hums quietly beneath the surface, soft but relentless. By morning, Lindsay had made herself at home. She was in the kitchen, barefoot again, flipping pancakes and dancing to music playing on her phone. Rachel looked relaxed, laughing at something on her screen, leaning against the counter like this was their house, their routine. Lindsay saw me and grinned. "Hey, early bird. Hope you're hungry." Yeah," I said. "Smells good." I watched Rachel walk over and hand Lindsay a coffee mug, my mug, the one she usually sets aside for me. A little thing. Maybe nothing. But added to the list. Later that afternoon, when I came back from a quick errand, I found the two of them on the back deck, sunbathing. Rachel in her bikini, Lindsay wearing one of Rachel's tank tops, and my sunglasses. There was a camera timer running on her phone. "Get in here with us," Lindsay said, waving me over. "We need a photo with the handsome husband." Rachel gave a half smile and adjusted the towel under her legs. "Maybe later," I said, feigning a grin. "I've got a couple emails to answer first." Rachel didn't push. She turned back to Lindsay, who was already scrolling through the new pictures. That evening, I noticed something else. Lindsay had unpacked. Not just clothes in the guest dresser, her makeup bag was in our shared bathroom, her robe hanging on the door, even a pair of heels by the entryway. She was settled. Like she wasn't planning to leave. I wanted to bring it up to Rachel, but every time I started, something stopped me. Her mood was light, energized in a way I hadn't seen in a while. I didn't want to ruin it. Or maybe I was afraid of what would happen if I asked the wrong question. Instead, I waited. Watched. Took note of the shift in how Rachel looked at me, how often she was on her phone, how Lindsay always seemed to be in the room at the exact moment something personal came up. Something had changed. And I was starting to think I was the last to know. From that night on, something shifted. Not all at once, more like a quiet unraveling, the kind you don't notice until the threads start to tug at your fingertips. Lindsay was supposed to be there for a few days, but as 1 week bled into the next, there was still no mention of her leaving. No flight home. No job waiting for her in Seattle. She just stayed. At first, it was easy to rationalize. Breakups can shake a person. Maybe she really did need time. Maybe Rachel wanted to be a good cousin, a good friend. But something about the way Lindsay embedded herself into our life, not beside it, but inside it, felt off. Like she wasn't visiting. She was occupying. She inserted herself into every space. She started suggesting we all do morning runs, something Rachel had never enjoyed but suddenly acted excited about. She sat between us on the couch when we watched movies. She began correcting how I did things in the kitchen. At first, it was playful, the dishwasher loads better if you angle the mugs like this, but then it became constant. You always put too much detergent. You should be using a wood-safe cleaner on this table. That's not really how you fold towels, is it? It wasn't just the advice. It was her tone, like she'd been here forever, like she knew our rhythms better than I did. And the strangest part? Rachel started echoing her. Not just agreeing, but adopting the same words, the same tone. I'd never heard Rachel call me passive-aggressive in 3 years of marriage, but suddenly that word came up after a joke I made about her new vegan, everything-free granola. "That's not funny," she'd said, crossing her arms. "Why do you always get sarcastic when I try new things?" It wasn't sarcasm. It was teasing. Something we used to do, something she used to laugh at. But now she looked at me like I'd embarrassed her. The more time Lindsay stayed, the more Rachel changed. She started staying out late, sometimes with Lindsay, sometimes alone. When I asked where she was going, she'd say, "I just need time to clear my head," or "Lindsay wants to show me a new place." Girl time. Always girl time. Always somewhere with no receipts, no details. She'd come home smelling like perfume that wasn't hers, something floral and musky, and once or twice, faint cologne. I told myself I was overthinking it, that sense cling to people in crowds. But even that logic started to wear thin. One Saturday, I came home early after forgetting my phone charger. Rachel had said she was out running errands, something about needing space and being productive. But when I tried to open the front door, I realized it was locked from the inside. Not just locked, deadbolt. Which made no sense. I knocked. No answer. Then again, louder. After nearly a full minute, the door opened. Rachel stood there, hair damp, towel around her shoulders. She looked surprised. Maybe a little off. "I was just showering," she said, like that explained everything. "Okay," I replied, trying to keep my voice neutral. Didn't mean to interrupt. She let me in, but the air felt heavier than it should have. As I passed the bathroom, I noticed the steam was already gone. The light was off. Only one towel on the rack looked used, and it wasn't the pink one she usually reached for. It was mine. Upstairs, Lindsay's door was shut. I didn't say anything. Not then. But that moment stuck with me. I started to keep track, not obsessively, not yet, but carefully, quietly, watching for patterns. And they were there. Lindsay always seemed to know where I was when I'd be home, when I was leaving. If I lingered on a lunch break, I'd get a sudden call from Rachel, "Hey, can you grab oat milk while you're out?" If I came home early, she'd already be out taking a walk with Lindsay. It wasn't just convenience. It was choreography. One morning, over breakfast, I watched Lindsay lean across the table and slip Rachel a folded piece of paper. Rachel took it without looking, sliding it into the back pocket of her jeans. "What's that?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. Rachel smiled too quickly. "It's just a reminder from Lindsay. She knows I've been stressed lately." "Reminder for what?" To breathe. Take care of myself." "Okay," I said slowly. "That's good, I guess." Lindsay was buttering toast like none of this mattered. "You should try it sometime," she said, not looking up. "Might help with your tension." Tension. That was the word she used a lot, usually when I disagreed with something or questioned anything too closely. That weekend, Rachel left her phone charging in the living room. She was in the shower. Lindsay was out. I didn't touch it, didn't unlock it. I just noticed something. She had changed the lock screen. Gone was the photo of us from that cabin trip last fall, the one where we were laughing on the dock, wind in our hair. Now it was a generic wallpaper. One of those moody nature ones, all fog and pine trees. Her password had changed too. It wasn't just the phone. It was everything, how she guarded it now, how she kept it face down, how she never left it in the open. Even when we were watching movies, it was always right next to her, thumb ready. One night, I pretended to fall asleep on the couch. I even snored a little just to sell it. Through barely cracked eyelids, I saw her texting. Her face was lit blue by the screen. I couldn't see the words, but I saw her expression. The way her mouth curved, the way she bit her lip. The way she held her breath just for a moment, like she was waiting for something specific to come through. The message came. Her fingers flew in reply. Then she leaned her head back on the pillow and smiled at the ceiling, not a happy smile, but a secret one. Later, when she finally turned in, she kissed my cheek and whispered, "You're so out of it," thinking I was still asleep. I wasn't. I lay awake for hours. The worst part wasn't the suspicion. It was the gaslighting. The way I began to doubt myself. Every time I brought up something small, like the schedule changes or how distant she'd been, she'd flip it. "You're always looking for a problem. You're just bored. God, can I not hang out with my cousin without you making it weird?" I started writing things down, dates, times, little moments. Not because I was planning to use them, but because I needed to know I wasn't going crazy. It wasn't one big thing. It was 1,000 little things all at once. And I could feel it, the shift, the distance, the secrets. I could feel the version of us we'd built starting to slip away. And the scariest part? She didn't seem to notice. Or worse, she did. And she didn't care. There's a difference between suspicion and certainty. Suspicion gives you room to doubt. It leaves cracks where hope can still wedge itself in. Certainty? It burns all the exits. And that's where I found myself one Thursday morning watching a stranger's name light up Lindsay's phone and realizing the final thread had snapped. It started like most mornings lately, too quiet. Rachel had already left, claiming she had an early walk with Lindsay even though Leo was still curled up on the couch unwalked. I didn't say anything. I just made my coffee and sat by the window watching the sun smear across the fence in pale streaks. Lindsay's phone was on the kitchen island, buzzing with a message. I wasn't looking for it. I wasn't snooping. But it lit up in my peripheral and my eyes went to it like they were pulled. The message preview was clear. From R. He's leaving at 3. Be ready by 3:30. Don't forget the blanket. I'll say it was my idea. It took me a second to process it. R. My name doesn't start with R. But Rachel's does. I stared at the screen, heart thudding so loud it felt like it echoed. I didn't even need the rest of the messages. That one was enough. Not just the content, the tone. It had planning in it. Collaboration. A rhythm between them I hadn't noticed before. Like a language they'd built behind closed doors. And it hit me all at once. This wasn't just some betrayal that had happened by accident, under pressure, or in some isolated moment of weakness. This had been thought through. Designed. Scheduled. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't confront them right away either. What could I say that hadn't already been dismissed or laughed off? Instead, I waited. I left the house at noon like I normally would on a Thursday. Kissed Rachel on the cheek, barely a brush, and said, "Meeting downtown. Might run late." She smiled, distracted, her phone already in her hand. I didn't go downtown. I drove 2 blocks over and parked on a quiet street, then walked the rest of the way back and waited behind a neighbor's hedge. It felt ridiculous at first. Creepy. Childish. But I stayed. I had to know. At 3:25 on the dot, the front door opened. Lindsay came out first, wearing oversized sunglasses and a bright yellow hoodie, not her usual. She looked both ways like someone crossing a freeway. Then Rachel followed. She had a duffel bag slung over one shoulder and a folded blanket tucked under her arm. She was wearing cutoffs and a loose-fitting top, the kind of outfit she might wear to the lake, casual, effortless, like she'd done this 100 times. She paused at the curb, glanced toward where I usually parked, then looked down at her phone. Moments later, a dark gray car pulled up. The window rolled down and a man leaned out, early 30s, slick hair, sunglasses, grin too big for the occasion. Rachel smiled back. She jogged over and climbed into the passenger seat without hesitation. Lindsay got in the back. The car pulled away, windows down, music already thumping. They were laughing. I stood in the shadow of the hedge, numb. I didn't know what to feel first: heartbreak, rage, humiliation, grief. I just stood there as the car disappeared around the corner, the sound of their laughter still floating through the air like the residue of a fire. It wasn't just betrayal. It was worse. It was orchestration. It was the casualness of it all. Like I wasn't even a variable anymore. Just a background prop to be worked around. I walked home slowly. Every part of the house looked different now. The mugs on the drying rack, the sneakers by the door, the throw pillows Lindsay had rearranged for feng shui, all of it tainted. All of it props in a stage I hadn't realized I was standing on. When they came back later that night, Rachel walked in like nothing had happened. She even kissed my forehead, too soft, too rehearsed, then dropped her bag at the bottom of the stairs. Long day? She asked. Very. Yeah, same. Lindsay needed a reset. I took her out to the lake. It was good for her. She was testing me. Or maybe she wasn't. Maybe she really thought I'd never notice. Never ask. She pulled a bottle of wine from the fridge and poured a glass for herself, then one for me. Cheers, she said, clinking her glass against mine. To healing. I nodded. To healing. I didn't say anything else that night. I didn't need to. The silence between us said everything. Over the next few days, I began to see everything more clearly. Patterns I'd missed before, the timing, the signals, the shifts in language. She stopped saying we when talking about plans and started using I. She'd say things like, I've been thinking about simplifying things, or I want more space to grow. She talked about growth like it was something she had to do without me. Like I was the weight holding her back. And Lindsay? She became quieter, weirder. She still hung around, still played the cool cousin card, but her energy changed. She was watching me now. Not passive observing. Waiting for me to ask the wrong question, give the wrong look. So I didn't. I started documenting instead. I took photos of the duffel, of the note she'd stuffed into her back pocket that morning. I made a digital folder on a drive she didn't know about. Notes, timestamps, screensh asterisk TS of conversations that made no sense. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't even preparation. It was proof for me. Proof that I wasn't losing it. That my gut wasn't lying to me. One morning, I found her old phone in a drawer. It wasn't password protected. Maybe she thought she'd wiped it. But when I powered it on, messages synced automatically through the cloud. And there he was. His name was Nolan. He'd been texting her since March. Sometimes daily. Always casual on the surface, hope you made it through Monday, miss seeing you smile, I'll bring the wine this time. But the undertones were clear. More than friends. More than just a flirt. And buried in the middle of a thread, a single line from Rachel to him. I feel freer when I'm with you than I ever have in my life. Even when I'm lying about it. That was the line that stayed with me. Because it wasn't just about what they'd done. It was about how light it made her feel. That's when I knew there was no coming back. The strangest part was how normal everything looked when Rachel came back. Like nothing had happened. She walked in on a Tuesday evening with a grocery bag swinging from her wrist and that same breezy smile on her face, like she hadn't been caught red-handed days before, like she hadn't driven off in someone else's car, someone else's orbit. She asked if I wanted Thai or Mexican that night and if we should finally get around to watching that documentary about volcanoes. I just nodded. She was already halfway through unloading the groceries before she turned and said, we should talk. The way she said it wasn't soft or remorseful. It wasn't even awkward. It was mechanical, like she was reciting from memory. I sat down at the counter and waited. She started slow. I've been thinking, a lot. That was the understatement of the year. She walked over to the fridge, pulled out a LaCroix, popped it open, took a sip. I want to reset things. Start fresh. With clarity. Clarity. That's the word she used. Not honesty. Not reconciliation. Not even forgiveness. Just clarity. I waited for an apology. Or even acknowledgement. Instead, she pulled her phone out and opened some kind of shared calendar app. She tilted it toward me. Let's build systems, she said. I stared at her. Systems? I asked. For communication. Cohabitation. Emotional labor. Everything. Let's stop assuming each other's roles and actually map them out. She tapped a few buttons. Like, this color's for chores. This is for alone time. We can set check-ins every Sunday. I didn't say anything. She continued, like she was presenting a pitch to investors. And I think we should do location sharing. Not because I don't trust you, but because transparency builds trust. Right? She was smiling as she said it like it was a clever idea she'd just invented. I couldn't help but notice the way she phrased that, not because I don't trust you. Not us. Just me. What is this? I finally asked, voice low. Her smile faltered just slightly. I told you. I want us to function better. I want to be intentional about how we move forward. I didn't realize we were project managing a marriage now. She rolled her eyes. Don't be cynical. It's about accountability. Accountability. Another word she'd picked up from some podcast, no doubt. She was full of them lately, little buzzwords that replaced actual emotion. Everything she said sounded like a script she'd been practicing. Like she wasn't really having a conversation with me, she was giving a TED Talk. About how to fix a relationship she refused to admit she'd broken. I tried to lean in to find some thread of realness underneath it. So, is this about Nolan? Her eyes went flat. That's not productive. I blinked. Excuse me. I'm not interested in backward blame. That kind of energy just feeds cycles we're trying to step out of. We? I said. You mean you. You're trying to skip the part where you tell me why you lied to me. Where you and your cousin turned our house into a stage. Rachel took another sip of her drink. I didn't lie. I omitted. I stared at her. You didn't lie? You omitted. There's a difference, she said calmly. You're thinking in binaries. Right and wrong. Guilty and innocent. But this isn't that simple. You cheated on me, I said. Silence. She finally looked down, fingers tapping lightly on the side of the can. I crossed boundaries. Yes. Boundaries. I laughed once, sharp. That's what we're calling it now. She looked up, eyes tired. Look. I'm trying to take responsibility in a way that's constructive. Not performative. And what do you call this? I asked, gesturing to the screen between us. This whole little framework you're rolling out, is this supposed to fix what you did? It's supposed to help us function without falling into old traps. I leaned back in my chair, the words hitting me like static. This wasn't a marriage anymore. This was a trial and I was the defendant. She wasn't my wife, she was a moderator, maybe even a judge. There was no vulnerability. No remorse. Just metrics and behavioral charts and cold, scripted detachment. You keep saying us, I said. But you're the one who left. You're the one who lied. You made me question myself. You made me feel like I was losing my mind, and now you want to give me color-coded accountability maps. Rachel didn't flinch. I get that you're hurt. No, I cut in. You don't. I stood up, suddenly feeling how small the kitchen had become. I needed space. Air. A version of this house that didn't feel like a soundstage for her new performance. I'm not going to fight you, she said as I walked toward the door. Good, I muttered. Because I wasn't sure I had anything left to fight with. That night, I slept in the guest room. Not because I was told to. Not because we agreed on it as part of some cohabitation reset. But because I couldn't stand to sleep beside someone who had planned an escape route, who had scheduled betrayal like a brunch. And because the master bedroom, once ours, no longer felt like a place I belonged. The following days were a blur of clipped sentences and strained routines. She cooked dinner. I did the dishes. We didn't speak. She texted me reminders about dog food and recycling pickups. I nodded, responded with a thumbs-up emoji, and moved on. She posted a photo of the sunrise on her Instagram with the caption, "Healing is non-linear." I stared at it for 10 minutes, then turned off my phone. I watched her wake up every morning with a clean face and perfectly messy bun, opening windows to let in energy, lighting candles like we were living in a wellness retreat. She started journaling again. Every night. Leather-bound, gold edges like the act of documenting gave her power. She didn't ask how I was doing. Not once. Instead, she left sticky notes on the fridge. Remember, compassion starts with presence. I threw them away. Lindsay, to my surprise, had vanished again, or maybe just retreated behind the curtain. I found her mug once, half full, lipstick ring around the rim, sitting beside the couch. I held it for a second before dropping it in the sink a little harder than I needed to. One evening, as Rachel was typing away on her laptop, I asked, "Is this what you wanted?" She looked up confused. "This. Us. Right now. This silence. These systems." She hesitated. Then she said something I'll never forget. "I wanted growth. I wanted change. I didn't expect resistance." I nodded. She saw my silence and tried to pivot. "I'm trying, okay?" she said, her voice cracking just a little. "I'm showing up." I stared at her. "You showed up with rules. Not with honesty." She looked away, fingers tightening around her mug. "Rachel," I said softly, "do you even love me anymore?" She took a long breath. "Then that's not a productive question." That was it. That was the moment I knew there was nothing left to salvage. No honest conversation. No apology. Just semantics. Cold clarity. No love. No us. Only two people trapped in a house full of definitions and neither of us speaking the same language anymore. I tried one last time. Call it foolish. Call it desperate. Call it hope. I just needed to know if there was anything real left under all the systems and semantics, beneath the carefully constructed walls of calm tone and behavioral frameworks. I had to ask her, not for answers this time, but for something simpler. Something human. It was a Sunday morning. The sky was gray and slow, the kind of light that makes you feel like the world is holding its breath. I made 2 cups of coffee. Hers just the way she liked, extra hot, oat milk, 1 sugar. I placed it in front of her as she was flipping through her laptop at the kitchen table, half-dressed in one of those oversized sweaters she always wore when she wanted to feel cozy but productive. She looked at the mug, blinked. "Thanks," she said, almost surprised. I sat across from her. "Do you have a minute?" Rachel sighed softly, closed her laptop with the kind of deliberate patience that told me she was already preparing to manage me. "I just want to talk," I said. "Not debate. Not dissect. Just talk." She nodded, but it wasn't an invitation, it was a license she was giving me. I took a breath. "Do you want to fix this?" There was a pause. Then she reached for a folder beside her. Thick. Heavy. She slid it across the table toward me. "What is this?" I asked. "A resource," she said calmly. "I compiled everything we've been through, arguments, communication breakdowns, patterns, triggers. I've been tracking it since January." I stared at her. "You've been tracking us?" Rachel opened her laptop again. "I made a Google document. I thought it'd help us get some clarity about what's working, what isn't." I opened the folder. Inside, bullet points, color-coded highlights, dated events with summaries like emotional withdrawal noted, possible residual resentment from previous week's conflict. There were charts. Tables. A section titled Behavioral Patterns and Conflict Frequency. She'd even included quotes, verbatim things I'd apparently said, cited like footnotes. "This isn't therapy," I muttered. "It's an audit." Rachel didn't flinch. "We need data if we're going to make objective improvements. Otherwise, we just fall into emotional cycles." I laughed once, not because it was funny, but because it was insane. "There's not a single word in here about you," I said, flipping through the pages. No ownership. No reflection. Just me, what I said, how I acted, what I should have done differently. "I'm the one facilitating the process," she said. "It's a starting point. You cheated on me." Rachel blinked. "We've talked about that." "No, we haven't," I snapped. "We've managed around it. You've built a narrative where betrayal is just a glitch in the system. Where love is something you analyze through spreadsheets." She looked genuinely baffled. "Isn't that better than screaming at each other?" I closed the folder and slid it back to her. "You don't want a marriage. You want a case study." There was a long silence. She looked down at her coffee. Then carefully, "So what are you saying?" I leaned forward. "I'm saying I don't want to be a research subject. I want to be your partner. But I don't think you want that anymore." Rachel's jaw tightened, but she didn't deny it. "Tell me the truth," I said. "Was any of it real?" Her eyes flicked up. "Define real." That did it. I stood up. "You know what? Never mind." "No, wait," she started. But I was already walking away. Because I wasn't going to beg for someone to define love like it was an abstraction. I knew what real felt like, I just hadn't felt it in this house for a long, long time. The next morning, I came downstairs to find her setting up the living room like a war room. Flip charts. Her laptop connected to the TV. Sticky notes in pastel colors. "What is this?" I asked, already regretting the question. She didn't look up. "A recalibration exercise." "For what?" "For us." I stared at her. "Is this because I pushed back yesterday?" She shook her head. "It's because you clearly need structure. And I need alignment." "Structure?" "Rachel, we're not running a startup. We're supposed to be married." She tapped a key and pulled up a slide, relational KPIs Q1 and Q2. I couldn't breathe. You made metrics for our relationship? We need accountability, she said like it was obvious. We can't fix what we don't track. She clicked to the next slide, a chart titled Emotional Availability versus Time Spent in Proximity. Bars. Arrows. Extrapolated predictions. I'm out, I said. Rachel froze. What? I can't do this, I said quietly. I can't live in a relationship that feels like an app that keeps crashing. You're being reactive, she said. I turned away. You're being unfair, she added. No, Rachel. I've been fair. Too fair. I've given you room to explain. Room to restructure. Room to turn this marriage into a lab experiment. And you used every inch of it to turn away from me. Her voice dropped. Then say it. What? Say you're done. I turned back to face her. I'm done. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just nodded like she'd already run that scenario through her head and found it statistically likely. She picked up her remote, turned off the screen, and started packing up the materials without a word. I walked upstairs. I didn't feel relief. Or sadness. Or even anger. Just hollow. Like I'd been arguing with a ghost for months and now the haunting had finally stopped. That night, I pulled an old box out of the back of my closet. It was full of things we'd once cared about: photos, ticket stubs, a little notebook we used to write messages to each other in when we couldn't sleep. Flipping through it was like reading a stranger's handwriting. One note from Rachel read, "Even when we're boring, I'd still pick boring with you over exciting with anyone else." I sat with that for a while. Then I closed the book, put the lid back on the box, and slid it under the bed. It didn't belong in this house anymore. Neither did I. Rachel's parents arrived the next weekend. I thought it was a check-in visit. Maybe even a chance to take some of the tension out of the house. Her mom had always been kind to me, and her dad was one of those stoic, yard-work type guys who gave respect when you earned it. I figured maybe they'd come, see how far things had drifted, and give her a little perspective. Instead, it felt like I was the one on trial. We were barely 5 minutes into small talk before Rachel launched into it. She stood by the fireplace like she was presenting at a company retreat, clicking through a PowerPoint she had mirrored onto the TV, not a metaphor. A literal slideshow. Titled, Relational Misalignments, a 3-year review. Her mom took notes. Her dad watched me with a look that said he wasn't surprised. That somehow this was expected. Rachel spoke with calm detachment as if she were discussing a renovation project, not a person. She used phrases like emotional bottlenecks and de-escalation deficits. She referred to me as the partner instead of my name. Lindsay was there too, sitting on the couch like some kind of consultant, nodding silently every time Rachel made a point. Her face unreadable, but her presence unmistakable. A shadow in the room. When they finally finished, after bullet points and pie charts and highlighted email transcripts, Rachel turned to me. Well, she asked. I didn't answer her. I walked into the hallway, opened a drawer, and pulled out a manila envelope. The divorce papers were already signed on my end. I came back, placed them neatly on the coffee table, and looked Rachel dead in the eye. You've rehearsed this version of reality for so long, you actually think it's the truth, I said. I'm not here to participate in your play anymore. I turned to her parents. I loved your daughter. I fought for her. But I won't be the villain in a story she's writing to justify walking away. Then I walked out. And for the first time in months, no one followed me. 3 days later, they found me. I was staying at a little motel off the freeway, one of those places where the carpet always feels damp no matter what time of year it is. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I needed space. Quiet. A place where Rachel's energy couldn't reach me. But they showed up anyway. Rachel and Lindsay. Standing side by side outside my room door with 2 coffees and that same rehearsed softness I'd come to expect. We just want to clarify a few things, Rachel said, eyes wide, voice gentle. It's been a rough few weeks. I think maybe things got taken out of context. Lindsay stayed quiet, clutching her cup, gaze steady. I opened the door but didn't invite them in. I'm not angry, I said. Not anymore. Rachel smiled, almost hopeful. You got what you wanted, I continued. You have each other. You have your version of the story. And now I'm giving you the house, the silence, and the space to live in it. I handed Rachel the keys. I've already spoken with my lawyer. Everything will go through him now. Then I looked at Lindsay. Said nothing. Not out of spite. Not because I was trying to send a message. But because there was genuinely nothing left to say. I walked past them, got in my car, and drove away without looking back. In the rearview mirror, they stood together, 2 silhouettes in the fading light, not chasing, not calling, just watching. Alone with each other. And the choices they had made.